All right, let's get started. Hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Danica. I'm with 3C Ren in the County of San Luis Obispo, and welcome to Energy Compliance using HERS/ACC measures part 2 with our experts Jennifer Rennick and Paul Dunn. And before I pass things off to them, I just have a few logistical slides to go over. Next slide, please. So a few Zoom reminders before we get started. Please make sure you are on mute throughout the duration of the training, and we highly encourage questions. And if any of them do come up, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can raise your hands and we can unmute you. And this session is being recorded, and it will be shared with you along with the slides in the next few days. And just a little bit about who we are. We are the Tri-County Regional Energy Network, also known as 3C Ren, and we're a collaborative partnership between San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And we are funded by ratepayer dollars collected through the public goods charge found on our utility bills. And the benefit of being ratepayer funded is that there's no cost to those we serve, and we're able to bring those dollars back into our region. And we currently offer 6 programs focused on 3 services: incentives, training, and technical assistance. And this training today is brought to you by the Energy Code Connect program. And if you'd like to learn more about our other trainings or other services, feel free to go to 3c-ren.org. And with that, I'll pass it over to Paul and Jennifer to get our course started.
Okay, welcome everybody. And so sorry.
Not enough coffee.
Okay, that's probably true. That's probably true. Not enough coffee. Okay, and the camera this way. That was Paul. Sorry I didn't have the camera. We will get going. This is part 2. Believe it or not, we know something about HERS. We just might not be that good at PowerPoint yet. We would love to be in person.
Yeah,
Maybe we could be in person.
we need a chalkboard and a conference room. Right?
We're
not recording.
Old school.
Yeah. Analog. I'm
Okay.
an analog guy. Okay.
But because you're sticking with us, you will get learning units for this. And if you're AIA, you'll get 1.5 learning units. ICC, you'll get the 0.15 learning units. And today we will do a quick review of kind of what's coming up with HERS, which Paul did, but I'll show you some slides to kind of go with it. You'll get a copy of the slides when we're done. You can also watch the recording, and hopefully, Danica, you can edit out all that garbage before you post it. I'm looking over at my screen where I see a camera, a picture of Danica nodding her. Yeah, okay. So we're going to go over the mechanical and plumbing, and the mechanical and plumbing part of HERS for single family residents, low-rise residential. It does also include the indoor air quality measurements. So real quick, coming January 1st, 2026, we will be in the 2025 new code cycle. The CEC has big picture goals for that. So they're continuing to look to leaning deeper into all electric. You still can use natural gas for your appliances, but the baseline for the most part is heat pump technology. And we're also looking to save water and energy by reducing water use in homes and non-residential buildings. For example, in the non-res buildings, there's new requirements for chillers and cooling towers to also help reduce water. The other thing to know is that our state did say that we would kind of freeze the code, so to speak, for single family residential energy code for 2025. So even though this new code comes up January 1st, 2026, and we have this multi-year adoption timeline for the code, we're in the process right now for doing it for the code that would be the 2028. However, for the single family residential, it looks like it'll still just be the 2025 that gets rolled into it. There's a number of manuals available to help folks with the energy code. There's a new manual for 2025, specifically related to HERS, and that's the Data Registry Requirements Manual. A lot of us probably won't ever touch that manual, but the manual is now there to help with what's called a data registry and the HERS providers. But before I get too far, HERS is getting a new name, so we won't really call it the HERS providers. We'll call it ECC, or Energy Code Compliance Rater, and Energy Code Compliance Providers.
Correct.
Okay.
And I want to back up a little bit on those manuals. If you're printing them, be prepared. They are thick. So have a good relationship with maybe a third-party printer and binder, because they are like, right.
They're thick. So I recommend the digital versions. I used to print them, and then have
them on the wall, and
it's
a lot of paper.
Right. So okay, so our HERS rater does a lot of good testing, and as Paul likes to say it, and so much more. So we're going to show you pictures of that and go over it.
Backing up too, this is another fun fact. Originally, when the Energy Commission created this kind of career, if you will, they were going to lob it over to the building inspectors, and they were expected to run around with the testing equipment and do an additional measure of work. And I think it lasted about 17 days when they said there's no way that a building inspector would go to final a job and bring a van full of equipment to test for energy measures. So that's how, back in the old days, the HERS rater was created. So that's morphed now into a new position, the ECC rater. And there's different levels of them. Back in the day, there was a 1 and a 2, has to do with whether or not you were just doing alterations testing or whole house energy rating. And now you can still be a HERS 2 rater. Is that correct? Okay.
As far as
end of speech.
Yeah. And yes, from what I could tell. And if you're not familiar with the process, and so for those folks where this might be new, otherwise it could be a review. I mean, typically we have this simplified version: design, submittal, construction, and then your final and occupancy for your building. That's the current permitting process. And then the HERS registry CF1R compliance document, what we call your Title 24 document, is created and uploaded to that HERS registry. Then the CF2R is your installation documents that are completed and uploaded to the HERS registry. Then the CF3Rs, your verification is completed, uploaded to that HERS registry. And then the building official can confirm that the CF2R, CF3Rs are uploaded, signed, and then there's something called a PSR that they look for, which is
Project Status Report.
And that process is similar for multifamily permitting. And so the form names change a little bit for the low-rise multifamily. So it's LMCC for compliance, the C for compliance at the end of that. It's low-rise multifamily code compliance. And then there's low-rise multifamily installation, so the LMCI, and then LMCV, and the V is for verification. And then those have a direct kind of corollary with what we might used to be seeing if you're used to single family is CF1R, CF2R, CF3R. So the new thing with HERS is everything that like the work that Paul does and how it's kind of all regulated and laid out was actually all under Title 20, not Title 24. And so one of the new things for the coming up code cycle is they pulled all of that into Title 24, which in a lot of ways makes sense that it would be part of the building codes rather than part of Title 20, which was appliances. And the other term that might be new, I've noticed a lot when you read up on what the ECC rater does and what the ECC providers are doing, is they're using the acronym FV and DT, and that just stands for field verification and diagnostic testing, which is the work that a HERS rater like Paul does.
So that's nothing new for us. I mean, that language was in codes going back to 2007.
Right. Yeah. So for you, it seems the same. For me as an architect, I guess looking at the stuff, I'm like, what the heck? Because it wasn't showing up quite like that in the document. So just kind of a heads up for those folks where that might be new to them. So, this goes back a little bit how Paul was saying, how might his work change under 2025? So there's some procedural changes, and that includes a quality assurance program, and there's going to be an interface with a new data registry. There's some new photo documentation requirements and new ECC annual reporting requirements and other stuff.
We'll see. It's going to be a moving target, I think, initially, but I'm waiting for the providers to basically tell us raters what to do and to make them happy. So I'm not going to panic now until it really starts showing up. I think that the upshot here is they just want more accountability, so that they can report, the providers can report to the CEC what's actually happening in the field. So I run around with an old school digital camera, that's got a timestamp on it. I suppose they're going to ask for location data as well. So it may mean I may have to rotate into, a smartphone that I can send photos to the cloud that in turn can be returned and pushed uphill to the providers and then up to the CEC from there. So location data, timestamp, all that to prove you've done the work, you are there, this is the results, and so on.
Right. And then there might be a little bit of new scope of work, which we have a couple slides on, which has to do with some mandatory compartmentalization testing for multifamily, i.e. blower door testing, and fault indicator display verification on ERVs, HRVs, and that's kind of a new prescriptive requirement. Otherwise, now the independent raters, if they're not employed by a rater company, they'll need to have maybe an annual activity report. I pulled this straight from the language so that you would have it. You're going to get a copy of the slide deck, but kind of the main thing I want to point out is that there is going to be a total number of field verifications and diagnostic tests that are performed by the rater, working for the rater company. It's supposed to be organized by that enforcement agency, and you also as a rater are supposed to be reporting like total and average costs of services charged for each of those types of field verifications, and you're supposed to have a report that you give to the homeowner on this. So each rater companies might have slightly different reporting requirements, but that's kind of the idea behind these new regulations, is to add a layer of accountability.
Kind of big brother, right? But we're going to see how much effort and results stems from all of this in the coming years, I suppose, or months maybe.
Yeah, that's right. And then this slide just gives you the language for kind of highlighting that report that is to be provided to the building or the project owner, and what the services were that were performed, and kind of laying out that there's an itemized field verification or diagnostic test and the results and the amount for that HERS rater. The other thing that's added to this is the photographic documentation that really clearly identify the location. So that's just clarifying that the raters should be doing it. So we think some of this new language is in reaction to what we call drive-by.
They call them drive-by HERS ratings, where some rater goes out, gets a picture of the address, but they don't even enter the house. It's been known to happen. Not my policy, but it's been known to happen. We have reports from GCs and other entities that are providing this data to the Energy Commission. So here we are.
Okay, and then part of that quality assurance review is there's an audit program, and that includes going out and verifying, having someone like Paul would go out and do the test, someone would be there and basically do a shadow audit. And then there's also some in-lab and desk audits where they'll be looking at the paperwork. And it's all part of just trying to make it greater accountability and kind of quality.
Yeah, and level the playing field. Make sure everyone's doing the right thing and doing it about the same way. Back in the good old days, when I was a CalCert rater, they had their own house up there in whatever town that is, and you physically went to their house, had known build elements into it, and you tested it. And so you had hands-on proctored exams in a field environment. Now it's mostly online. I'm not sure how Cheers is going to go forward with rater training. If there will be like a field practical when it's all done, probably yet to be determined.
Okay. That sounds good. So now I'm going to dive into sort of these supporting forms and plumbing and mechanical. The reason I'm bringing this up is if you're an architect on the call or just interested in understanding more about what HERS raters do, you can get a hold of these forms on the California Energy Commission website, and you'll find them under the 2022 code. There's a category called supporting documents. And if you highlight this, click on the supporting documents, you're going to see a list of documents. And today we're going to kind of look at the plumbing and the mechanical side of it. It's very similar for the 2025, except for some reason, don't freak out, I did for a little bit, it's not under supporting documents. They moved it to under software. So I put when you go on the website, if you want to see what these forms look like, go under software and then click that, because it includes the software and the manuals and the forms under that category. But I'm going to jump back to 2022 supporting documents. When you open up that part of the software, you will see a list of plumbing, for example, documents that list the CF1R, CF2R, CF3R. Okay, that seems fairly straightforward. And today we're going to look at a couple of those that specifically deal with HERS single family hot water distribution systems. And then for the multifamily, it's similar. The list is a little longer, but it's not so much that the tests change. It's that there's a different form for a slightly different verification related to, what you're checking for the plumbing distribution system, for example, or the type of system. And with low-rise multifamily, you have a central hot water heating system. So those forms, and then distributed, meaning individual water heater for each individual unit. So those forms change a little bit.
For the energy consultant, you have a number of different types of plumbing credits you can reach into. So it gets a little complicated, right?
Right. And so,
compact, verified, non-verified, so.
Yeah. And so I threw the list up here just to, one, demystify, not to really overwhelm, but just to say, hey, when you pull this list open, they just list it out. So I added these little brackets just to kind of show that there's groupings of documents. And once you get into this line of work, it's not as complicated as it appears at first. But it's nuanced. And for architects that are interested, we're just going to hone in on a few things, because it's kind of you can use these forms also to generate your sheet notes and things that you need to help inform your design if you want to get into that kind of detail. Today, we're just going to focus a bit on duct leakage diagnostic and a little bit, the air infiltration is related to duct locations. I think we have a picture on that. And some space conditioning. These are kind of the big groupings. And these are the other big groupings that have to do with your diagnostic and duct testing, and also related refrigerant charge verification and the equipment verification. Oh, yes. And the location of your mechanical exhaust. We can't forget that for IAQ.
Yeah.
And then similar for the supporting documents, these are the most referenced on the CF3Rs. Same kind of corollary form. So CF2Rs, CF3Rs, but this is the most entailed list is in the mechanical side of it. But this is kind of a more visually understandable list of the types of forms that the HERS rater deals with. That's part of your whole permitting process. And then the big categories would be electric ready, your envelope, lighting, mechanical, plumbing, solar PV battery, and solar zone area. Those are the kind of the main categories. Pool and spa is also in there. It doesn't look as bad when you look at it this way.
Yeah,
That's what I
in a
think.
practical sense, what I test for or inspect and generate forms for is about 1/3 of that listing there. I'm never doing anything with a pool and spa, whole house fan. I haven't filled out a MEC 31, I think, ever, but the 27, 25, the MEC 01 is kind of like the starting point for all the mechanical forms and so on. So it's not as complicated as it looks, at least in my work area, climate zone, 4 or 5, maybe a little bit of 6.
Yeah. And then the basic approval process, like we mentioned, that CF1R is on the HERS registry. That's your Title 24 report. That's the piece of paper that you get, the architect receives from the energy consultant, and this is what's uploaded to the HERS registry. But on typically page 3 of that report, you're going to see the, in this case, cheers watermark to show that it's official. But there is an area of required special features and HERS feature summary. This one I gave a printout because this particular report, the energy consultant took a lot of credits to get this project to pass. And by doing that, it also meant that they were triggering a lot of stuff that a HERS rater has to come out to the job site to do. And so, you're going to see this kind of back and forth between the architect has a particular design, the energy consultant models that design in the software, and then sometimes has to look for other ways to get the building to pass without changing the architect's design. And in some instances, that's where then certain HERS measures for extra credit is taken. And then Paul comes out, verifies it. Then the CF2R, CF3Rs are on the registry. Then the enforcement agency can see that the forms have been, uploaded and that everything passes.
This is why, ladies and gentlemen, let's go back one.
Oh, okay.
We like to have a pre-construction meeting so the rater or someone of knowledge can go over what's on this CF1R. The special features section really applies to the building inspector or the agency having jurisdiction, AHJ. And then the rater, as educator, has to kind of explain to people what's going to be needed that needs to be installed, verified, tested, and so on, that the energy consultant needed to model to get the house or the dwelling to pass.
Right.
So please, we're saying too, make light of that and put it on your cover page so everyone knows there's going to be work required to make everything sync.
Right. So we do recommend these 2 tables get on your drawing set, at least to help get everyone on board. Right, because it's something that hasn't been done. Now, this is what you see on the Cheers registry. Now, yes, yeah. Cheers registry. And so kind of starting from the bottom, you'll have that CF1R and work your way up to the CF2R installation forms and CF3R verification forms. And each one of these little boxes you could click on and see the documents once you're on that registry. And then the PSR, the project status report, is what gets printed and it goes top down. So CF1R, CF2R, CF3R, but what your plans examiner, building official is really looking for is that the status is checked and it's a green.
Right. They love the green dot. That's the goal here.
If they see the green
Okay.
dot, you did it. And that's what they're looking for. Okay, now we're going to dive into the actual fun stuff. So what I'm going to do is show you a slide, kind of this format. And the top part of the slide is a snippet from the CF1R or the Title 24 that kind of highlights that table that lists some HERS features. And then I made a list of some of the CF2Rs and CF3R forms that go with it. And then we're going to follow it up with maybe kind of a highlight of the form, but some pictures so that Paul can tell you a little bit more about what he does. And just to reiterate, that these things are triggered on that CF1R. Paul highly recommends a job site meeting to review these requirements. And then the HERS inspection for this particular case, local exhaust, is going to measure the airflow of the fans. So HERS feature, it's called out as an indoor air quality ventilation. So those 4 words, what they really mean is that you triggered something, and this one's a requirement for everything, that Paul's going to come out and measure the fans and also take a look at the kitchen range hood. We're going to start with the kitchen range hood right now. And this is kind of a new thing with something called capture efficiency. But in case you haven't got the memo yet for our current code cycle, that how much ventilation your kitchen hood has is dependent on the dwelling floor area and dependent on whether or not the hood is over a natural gas range or an electric range. So those things conspire together to determine the amount of ventilation you need. So in this case, this size dwelling was between 750 to 1,000 square feet. So it needs 130 CFM. And then Paul will come out and actually take a look at the equipment. And then he goes and takes a look at that kitchen hood and he's looking for
Data.
So,
Model number. So,
and HVAC certified. And then looking for what's on the CF3R in terms of how many CFM, meaning cubic feet per minute airflows there, and what the sound rating is, and then confirming that.
Yep, it's 50-50. There's the field work to get what was installed, get a picture of that data plate. Then we go to the HVAC registry, which is a huge giant spreadsheet, and you can search for the model number and see its rated actual CFM and sound rating.
And the reason the California Energy Commission included sound ratings is because the studies that were done through the EPA and other government supported studies was that folks didn't use their kitchen hood fans if they were too loud. And then the indoor air quality inside the homes diminished greatly. And they found a positive correlation between low indoor air quality and higher amounts of asthma, especially in children. So this really came down to how can we help people have better housing? And if this requirement was put in place, then multifamily housing projects meeting this would be providing better housing for people. Because even back in the day when we first started out, you didn't even have to have a kitchen hood fan that ventilated to the outdoors. But so that's where that came in.
Along that way, the mantra developed to build it tight, ventilate right. So back in the day too, the Energy Commission was using like kind of their typical model home as being a tract home built near a freeway where no one opened their windows and doors due to noise or theft or whatever. So they had to kind of come up with a go around to actually get air moving through the dwelling. And for a long time, you could kind of check that box by just having an exhaust only fan running, which is kind of contrary to logic because now you're depressurizing the house and who knows what's coming in. So now they're really promoting balanced indoor air quality measures to meet the code.
That's right. And then your bathroom fans still have to meet the minimum exhaust just to function as a bathroom fan. And that is to be tested. And that's picture of
Here I am a couple days ago,
Yep.
tracked home in Paso, measuring an exhaust fan in the bathroom.
Right. And then the new way and now of providing air into dwellings is to use balanced ventilation, or you can even use heat exchanger or ventilation. Ventilation strategies where it either recovers energy or recovers the heat. And then that also then is verified by HERS Rater. And this is just an example of one brand of a system that was at a house that we worked on that used a Zender system, but there's many, many other systems out there to use.
They don't have to be expensive either.
This one's expensive. This happens to be a custom home. They went with the full highest thing, but they don't have to be that expensive. And we'll have a picture of something that's not as expensive. And then, like we said, those forms for single family, it's really similar to the forms for low-rise multifamily, which also highlights some of the things that have to be done for, but it includes a little bit more. Like Paul points out, it includes backdraft dampers and some air sealing, extra air sealing to stop air movement between dwellings that he looks at. So the real kind of bottom line is under the 2022 code, which we are in now, you could, I'm going to let Paul talk, you could do balanced ventilation or do compartmentalization testing.
Right. So what you see on the right is my blower door in a small dwelling in Santa Maria. And we had to verify that there is less than 0.3 CFM per square foot of interior surface area. So that's all your 6 sides of a box summed up. And then we have to get a CFM 50 measurement using that blower door to verify that it is tight to that level of integrity. So there's a little bit of math in there and certainly some field work. On the left, we have what's considered a balanced style. It's an ERV.
Mm-hmm.
And it has probably 2 supply and 2 return vents that allow a balanced airflow into the dwelling. That guy, is that a Renew Air? So
yes,
yeah, those are more like in the hundreds of dollars, whereas the Zender might be more in the thousands.
correct.
Okay. So it's possible. The thing is though too, architects, you got to design for that and we need a place for it. So we don't want to throw it in there as an afterthought. So let's design around these measures so that we can get in front of it.
Right. And then that's going to be even more important under the 2025 code because these units need to be accessible. And I've got a slide coming up that kind of lays that out. So for the 2025 code, as we mentioned, it used to be that you could do, well, under 2022 code, you could do balanced ventilation like we showed you with the ERV or HRV, or you could even have just a supply fan into the dwelling and then an exhaust fan out of the dwelling without doing an energy or heat exchange. And that takes less space. It's very simple system, but it's sometimes not that great if you live in one of our climate zones where the air, outside air is very cold or very hot because it'll introduce it into the space unconditioned.
Yeah.
But it was completely doable. Or you could have the supply only ventilation and assuming that your bathroom exhaust fans would be running a lot of the time anyway. Now it's you do balanced ventilation or supply only ventilation, and you're going to do the compartmentalization testing anyway. And yeah, go ahead.
Why compartmentalization? The idea was that in a multifamily dwelling, what if your neighbor is a chain smoker and you're getting, byproducts of that in your house? So they wanted to at least have an effort to contain air quality within dwellings.
Yes. And my neighbor is a chain smoker of a different type of herb now, and I wish I had a filtration system and more balanced ventilation. But anyway, that's another story. We'll keep moving on. So, but you get the idea. So I put this in here so that you would have the language to refer to. So balanced and supply ventilation component, those have to be accessible now under this new code update. So that means that this ERV, HRV has to be serviceable from within the occupiable spaces, or if you put it in a basement, garage, balcony, closet, or even accessible rooftop. But you have to have access to it, and this location can't be more than 10 feet above a walking surface. And if you're servicing the inside of an attic, you have to have the following. So in an attic, you have to have fault indicator display, and that meets certain requirements. You have to have an attic access door where the hatch includes an integral ladder if you're going up into the ceiling. And you need to have a walkway that's inside that attic so that you can actually get to the HRV and ERV to change the filter and do the maintenance. And the kind of the reason for that is because the way these are built and the way they're designed is they have what's called an ERV core or an HRV core, and that media needs to be cleaned periodically. Plus, there's air filters associated with it so that you have quality indoor air quality. And if you can't get to it, people don't change the filters. Then the whole system is a bust. And you have the potential to collect moisture in them. So they have to be easily accessible. Like putting it into a hall closet, for example, is really easy. And the fault indicator diagnostics, if you have to, do a little bit more than just open a closet door, but then that alerts you to these things needing to be changed. Okay, so we kind of spent a little bit of time on that because that's the new stuff. And now we're going to go kind of into areas of the HERS things that are more maybe typical, what you would expect. And some of it has to do with climbing up into an attic. This is one of my most favorite pictures that Paul sent me because it shows the Carl's Jr. container left in the attic.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, very common.
Get hungry.
You get hungry up there. God bless the HVAC guys and girls that, spend their days either under a house or in an attic and so on.
So right. So
fun.
So those of us who do this work, we're climbing up in attics, and then we're checking things out, and we're the royal we. I don't do this part. Paul does this part. Connects the equipment to the HVAC duct system, which a lot of time is located in the attic. So I'm going to let you talk about this.
Yeah, very common. I mean, I drive around in my Prius, and I need a bumper sticker that says "I heart duct testing." I've done, 3,500 of them in the last 16, 18 years, something like that. So what I have is, where it's connected to the return grill there, that's a piece of, it's called core cell or something. It's kind of like that political yard sign material. And then I have what's called a takeoff collar attached to it so that my duct, my piece of flex duct can just hook right up to it. And I just go old school and I take masking tape and I tape that receiver piece right up to the return grill after I remove the filter if it has one. And then my piece of equipment just attaches that directly. Then on the 2-channel pressure gauge has one channel dedicated to indicating what the pressure is in the duct system, and that's routed through a vent cap that attaches to a supply duct or a supply grill, and through it is a pressure tap. So that tells the gauge what that pressure is. And then the other channel on the right-hand side is the amount of CFM that's been calculated on the fly. That see the red hose connected to the gauge, that is connected to the fan. And so the fan is basically the gauge is sensing what the fan is generating from a pressure standpoint. So really all it is basic subtraction. What is the pressure in the system? What is the pressure that's being generated by the fan? And then based on the aperture of the fan that I have there, using in this picture, it's ring number 3 for you raters out there. It tells you every second what that loss is in cubic feet per minute. This is a big system that I tested last week. It's probably, I believe it's like a 3-ton heat pump. So we would be in a 5% leakage test, no more than 60 CFM could be lost and still pass. And in this particular example, it's about half of that. So, you know, pop the champagne. This is a 2.5% approximate duct leakage test.
Oh, that's great.
It's good. So, especially considering everyone that from the factory, most air handlers are like around 1.5% to 2% leakage. And of course, there's a special credit for low leakage air handler, which is 1.4% or less. So they're very common now. Most air handlers are getting pretty tight. The days of a leaky old, air handler box are gone, the way of the dodo.
That's good.
Yeah.
Very good. Yay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and here's some of those percentages that what we're looking for. So this is included for your information and to give you a little bit of reference. And I should have clicked that slide sooner. You were just talking about it.
It all dovetails perfectly.
Okay, and then the MEC 20 series, this is where we get into, again, CF1R, look at the HERS feature, but now we're talking about that duct leakage testing, low leakage air handling unit, and some of the forms associated with it. And Paul does talk about doing the kickoff meeting and some pre-testing with it. And he's also going to go out there and look at some of the other HERS items. These things, well, you explain it.
Yeah, what I do is
verification. It triggers other forms.
Yeah, say like just last week, I went to a custom build in Atascadero, meet the GC there, and I'm going down this list. I'm saying, okay, who's your HVAC guy? And okay, yeah, I know him. He does good work, blah, blah, blah. And then here's going to be my test I'm going to do, looking at this page right here, and how long it's going to take me or whatever. And let's get in front of it. Let's make sure that he actually does purchase a low leakage air handling unit, so we can check that box at final. And then you see the first measure on there, the QII. I'm walking this job with this guy at frame so we can get in front of the air sealing portion of the QII credit. So this is why we like to get there early at slab, or as if we're going vertical, then the rater can show up and we can start addressing certain, particularly nagging areas that we have to get in front of to meet the QII air sealing credit.
Which, right there, tell us about this.
Okay, so this is mandatory that in the HVAC world that you significantly seal the ducts to the surrounding surface. In this case, it's drywall, very common. Most guys I found that I test for, they really like mastic tape to seal that, or venture tape. A flexible caulking would be good as well. Just takes a little bit longer and potentially maybe a little messier. What you see on the lower left there on the right-hand side, that's the water-based mastic that they use. The tradespeople call it Pookie. It's brush applied with a chip brush. And you
that name just great.
Yeah, I used a lot of it. Just because you're using a lot of it doesn't mean you're a good job. So you have to really pay attention to make sure that you are sealing all those little gaps that can be present when you're marrying, a round duct to a rectangular or square plenum box, with your little dog ears to kind of make it all connect. So it takes a little bit more time, but this mastic lasts for years and years and years, and I think takes what could be a problem to a non-problem, and is verified by testing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes even though the energy code's moving a lot to heat pumps, you still have gas furnaces.
Gas furnace. That's a Train S series box. These have been around for about 5 or 6 years. Really nice and tight. For sure it'll take the low leakage air handling credit. And they come in either a single stage or a 2-stage unit. And they can be installed on their side, or they're a multi-position air handler. So they can be on the side or standing straight up, whatever in there. So we have venture tape used in this instance to marry the evaporator coil to that air handler. That's to the right there. Venture tape is UL approved, and it's really sticky. It's kind of like a vinyl-y kind of stuff. Very common in the trades. And I see that in attics all over this county. When I'm up there, I'm getting the air handler data. In other words, what is the input and output of the furnace? Because that data we need to have as raters to figure out, if we are doing a leakage test, what is our denominator? Because through testing and through physics, we know that there's 21.7 cubic feet per minute per 1,000 BTU output of a furnace. So if we have a 3-ton HVAC system with a, say, what they call a 3-ton blower, that would typically be married to a 60,000 BTU input furnace that would normally produce about around 1,200 CFM. So the rater is allowed to take the larger of the two denominators, or physically measure the airflow if there is air conditioning present, and take the largest number to use as a denominator for testing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it does to me.
Okay.
You can put
Raise your hand if there's any questions. It's really not necessary for architects and builders, but the HVC guys, they know what it's all about.
And that's the important part. I think for the architects, for those of us architects and also energy consultants, it's just kind of getting a better idea of what it is we're requiring. Because on our end, we could check a box, or we could say, we want this design, make it work. And then what does that actually mean? This little box we checked in the software, and it means all the stuff that Paul's talking about.
And how long does it take? My average duct leakage test is about almost exactly an hour. So if we have HVAC, so we have to do airflow and fan efficacy testing, you start your day, usually just do the duct leakage test. But if you happen to have your airflow testing equipment already there, you could go ahead and run the system and put your airflow testing device on your return grill if there is one, or two. You add them up, and you can do your air measurement testing then, provided that you can, within 5 minutes, measure your fan efficacy, i.e. how many watts are being pulled through the air handler when it's running in air conditioning mode. That's kind of, if there's HVC guys out there, they know how this works. And I want to get back to duct leakage real quick. In order to guarantee you're going to pass duct leakage, when you're wrapping up your T's and Y's, guys, it's 1.5 wraps of venture tape around your inner collar, maybe a drawband on that, and then some Pookie, and then pull your outer collar over, give it a 1.5 wraps of venture tape and another drawband, and you'll be at 1.5 to 2% all day long.
Oh, that's great.
End of sermon.
Yay. And then part of that too is you have to verify that the equipment is what's listed in the energy report.
Yes. If you do a shortcut and the energy consultant is modeling a 95% efficient safe furnace, and you went to Home Depot and got an 80%, you're going to fail. So don't waste your money. Make sure you have your pre-con meeting and get the right equipment so we can meet what is modeled by the energy consultant, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
before we move on, there is a question in the chat from Ellen Strickland. They're asking, do sealants and mastic tapes impact the testing of AQ?
Say that again, Danica?
Yeah, do sealants and mastic tapes impact the testing of IAQ?
Okay, IAQ is a different test, and there may be some tapes and mastics used in that, but in general, I don't see that as an issue as long as they are used correctly, because all I do as a rater is I measure the actual flow. I'm not taking any air quality in terms of the chemistry of the air or anything like that. It's only the flow I'm measuring. Does that answer your question?
Okay, well,
Okay.
we'll circle back around and hopefully get that question answered. This is just an example of kind of what split system heat pumps look like. So you can have your outdoor compressor condenser unit that provides heating and cooling. It's like how air conditioners work, but now the heat pumps also are providing heating. And then inside you have an air handler, and that air handler could be located in a garage, it could be located in a closet, be located in the attic. It's just now the whole system is electric. And then Paul does a similar process for testing that system for duct leakage and the air handler. And then in this case, that outdoor unit, you're going to do the same sort of thing. Look at the equipment, verify that it is the right equipment, that it's AHRI certified, rated for that particular piece of equipment.
And little sidebar,
Yeah.
I was on a job yesterday with that same style, that model there. These things are amazingly quiet. They have gone really improved the level of sound emittance on these things. You can barely hear it running when it's calling for 3 tons of cooling.
That's
Yeah,
Yeah.
good to know, architects.
good to know.
And I know cities are all about, are you in or out of the setback? And, you've got to get the slimline model or whatever. Hopefully that stuff is going to change because they are getting so quiet.
Yes.
Okay.
And that same unit, you have to test for refrigerant as part of the whole HERS thing. And I put a quote there. As Paul says, best time to verify refrigerant charge is while looking over the shoulder of the installing contractor.
Yeah. Why do it twice is my mantra. So I have relationships with a number of installers. And if they say, yeah, today we're going to have to pump this thing down and load in some refrigerant, I meet them on the job and I can collect the data right off their gauges, which is awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now, a lot of heat pumps, especially in the ductless mini split world, come pre-charged, and you won't have to take any measurements. It's just strictly what is the amount of charge on the nameplate, 5 pounds, 11 ounces, whatever. And that data gets entered on the MEC 25.
But this is something that happens. Architects and this is going to happen no matter what. It's a mandatory requirement for the
some climate zones.
Some climate
Yeah,
zones.
the EC and other climate zones may need to take that credit.
Right.
So I don't have to do it on every job. It's just if it was called for.
Okay, good.
That's
Yes,
kind of
I should have known that.
The luxury of climate zone 5 at least. And then of course 6, they used to call it the paradise climate zone, something like that. They're so mild, it's not you don't have as many measures as a rater to test sometimes. Just depends on what the energy consultant had to dig into. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then some of the things as an energy consultant, some of the credits I'm looking for is if we can get ducts in conditioned space. Sometimes it's possible to do it. It does require visual inspection of the duct location. And then there's some testing that Paul or other HERS rater would have to do. And some of the requirements for architects, this is where it is good to pull this form, if you can, just to look at what additional requirements are, because really the bottom line is the ducts have to be within the air barrier. So with drywall ceiling, let's say at the attic, the ducts have to be below that, and they can't just be opened up to the attic in the soffit that's built for the ductwork. So ducts in soffit has to be below a ceiling. You have to have a continuous air barrier.
Does
That's
that
probably the
mean
biggest
just because someone's going to spray their lid, now they're getting ducts and conditioned space credit? It doesn't, because it's not conditioned, correct? Because there was a lot of shortcutting kind of going on there for a while. Like, oh, well, I sprayed my lid to 5.5 inches deep. I have my air barrier up there, and my attic, is all my equipment's in the attic.
Yeah, are they putting insulation also including the insulation on the attic floor as part of their whole system?
As in like a high performance attic condition.
Or is it truly?
Either way, you're not really conditioning the attic. There's no supply vent there or return. Okay. This is where you get into the weeds, guys. Okay.
Okay, well, we like to call it it's a semi-conditioned attic.
Is there an available credit then?
You know what?
I stumped the chump. Okay.
I wasn't expecting the conversation to go this way, and I'm thinking
Okay.
like, oh, are we going to finish on time? We have to finish
All
on
right.
time.
I'll shut up. Sorry.
But talk to me. Talk to me.
Okay.
Because no, there's a way to do it. We'll. There's a solution here, and it's more complicated than what we have time for right now. It's not complicated. It's just more complicated than what we have time for. But there's a way to do it so that it is all part of the conditioned space. It's kind of where you call your air barrier,
The thermal boundary.
your thermal boundary, your air barrier all together. I have a client where we just went ahead and made basically a cathedral roof, and then the attic has a pull down ladder and it's storage and it's semi-conditioned.
Okay. All right.
I think there's ways to do it. So anyhow, just an example here, low leakage ducts in conditioned space, kind of a continuation. This just shows what all this looks like when you have forced air units in the garage, and you have to make sure it's all sealed because you can't afford to use your garage to park vehicles and to store chemicals and have it pull that air into your duct system and distribute it through your house. So it's really important to comply with that.
You don't want to breathe WD-40? Paint thinner?
Only, well, sometimes.
Okay.
No, no, never.
So that's the logic there, right?
Or logic there. And then kind of detailing here, there's a credit called variable capacity heat pump compliance credit.
Good credit.
It's super helpful. This, like the other thing, triggers the refrigerant charge. You do have to have verifications both at the installation and final. There is a framing stage construction site meeting that's highly recommended, because in order to get this credit, the indoor units of your split system heat pump has to be within the air barrier and the thermal barrier. So it's pretty straightforward when you have a ductless system wall mounted. However, if you go with like ceiling recessed units, also ductless, you have to have the unit within the continuous air and thermal barrier. So one way to do that, per the energy code on the left, is to do 2-inch closed cell spray foam, continuous, and it does have to interact with bringing it down all the way to the top plates. And there is a way to detail this so you really can have a continuous air barrier and a continuous thermal barrier. And then now your HVAC equipment is within the thermal and air barrier. And the other way to do it is if you're having insulation on the ceiling attic, you have to create, to comply with the credit, you have to create some kind of box around the unit.
Build the box.
And the easiest way to do it is to build a box with drywall and seal and tape all the edges, and you have to paint the drywall.
Yeah, it's not easy because you're gonna have line set penetrations and a condensate line to run out of that ceiling cassette.
Right. So we see the detail on the left being used more frequently with that. But that's an option, and it's a good credit. So now we're going to move to hot water distribution. There's a bunch of credits you could get. However, usually, where Paul's going with this is I was saying, oh, there's credits you can get, but usually if you're modeling as an energy consultant, if I model the house the way it was built or designed, it's not a credit that should be showing up in my energy report. It's actually a huge penalty that's showing up, but that's kind of the case, rarely the case. So in Energy Pro, for example, the software that I use, there's a place where you can tell your software what type of plumbing distribution you have, and whether it's compact distribution or expanded credit compact distribution, distances to plumbing fixtures, etc. But, you know, there's something called point of use plumbing, which we'll talk about. You could get 0.3, which means it's a credit. Anything less than 1 is a credit. Pipe insulation can give you a little bit of credit. That's 0.85, so it's like a 15% credit. You can do what's called compact design, and that gives you some credit, but that requires HERS verification for that. And what, unfortunately, Paul sees a lot of is recirculation pumps put on plumbing systems without the proper controls. And technically, those all should come as huge penalties, but they're so popular with the homeowners and the builders that sometimes what we've both noticed is they get installed after everyone leaves. But after final, but what it means for the homeowner is that now their hot water piping system is acting like a giant radiator for the house, because you're just pumping hot water through the pipes, which is in the summertime adding unwanted heat to the house. In the winter, maybe it's not so bad, but if you're on a tank, you're going to run out of hot water, or you might notice your gas bill going up because you're constantly heating your hot water. Yeah, so the penalty is a little less with HERS inspection, but it's still supposed to show up as a penalty. So that's kind of a big FYI for everybody. Usually you're out there taking a look at this is the install, and this showing a heat pump water heater. It does have a demand controlled recirculation pump. In this case, it does have the manual shut off and check valve. Yeah, it's, if you can design your heat pump water heater to be as close to the plumbing fixtures as possible and avoid a recirc pump, and just not install a recirc pump, then you will get the best, highest efficiency out of your appliance, and you won't run out of water in that tank. But a lot of folks still want to put a recirc pump, and then they're disappointed when they pump the hot water out of the tank throughout the house at regular intervals and run out of hot water. So it's kind of an FYI. So why do I mention it? Because architects have a lot to do with where those appliances are located.
And don't put it next to a bedroom, because heat
yeah,
pump water heaters have a compressor on it, and so it's making some noise. And so design around that.
yeah, and we do classes specifically for heat pump water heaters. So which we talk about how to mitigate for noise and better ways to locate it and how to work with heat pump water heaters. But just in general, with all of this, you can get a HERS credit for pipe insulation to do a little bit above and beyond what is already required as a mandatory measure. And I see this pipe insulation job, and I was pretty excited because this was one of the better ones I've seen, even though Paul pointed out, oh, it looks like they forgot to put tape around those elbows and T's right there, but at least they did a mitered cut and insulated it fully. We've seen some pretty, well, we've got a class, Paul and I do, that we're going to hopefully be able to do it for the next year after January, which shows you some really good pictures of plumbing and heat pump water heaters.
Okay, really?
Yeah. Okay. Paul doesn't know it yet.
It's not in my inbox, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, it hasn't been scheduled. I'm just giving you a heads up that So we got that in the works. Okay, so you can get some credit if you put your heat pump water heater close to your plumbing fixtures, and you can take a compact heating credit, and it means, in this case, you don't need the HERS verification for it if it's the basic credit, but it is supposed to show up on the plan set, and it gives you a pretty good credit. Same thing with the expanded credit. Now this one, same sort of thing. It shows up on your HERS summary feature. It's going to show up on the heat pump water or the heat pump verification itself. Expanded credit does require HERS verification. And this, in this case, Paul would come out, but you get a better credit for it. It gives you an extra 10% credit if you do it that way. The tricky part with this, and what I typically don't see, is that the architects aren't calling out that it's compact plumbing, and they're not like putting dimensions on the plans to prove that it's compact plumbing. But this is something where the architects could work with the homeowner to locate the heat pump water heater, like in this example, in the garage, not on a bedroom wall, but also very close to where, kind of in the middle of where all the hot water is needed. And all the piping needs to be insulated to get that credit. And then what shows up on the forms with that HERS verified are those dimensions. And it's a plan dimension, but you are required to take the most direct path with your plumbing to that fixture. So you don't want to go up to the second floor, through the attic, down all the way to the first floor. So in this case, that hot water plumbing would need to run either, if it's a raised floor, right under the floor and up to the kitchen sink, for example, or to the showers, or it would have to run through the floor and direct and as close as possible. And again, then each of these dimensions would be entered into the software, and they should be showing up on the plans. For the point of use plumbing, this is a credit, and this is a credit that you can take for larger homes, but if it's new construction addition that are 500 square feet or less, then you have to do this if you're going to have an electric water heater. And what that means is taking the most direct path. And what you want to do is right off the water heater, you want to manifold it so that you can get the smallest line size needed. So for example, a sink only needs 3/8 inch line diameter, not a 1/2 inch or 3/4, then narrow down. You want to manifold it, narrow the piping down as soon as possible, because it gives you the least surface area, least heat loss, and it's the only thing that you need for those fixtures. Anything you want to add about that?
I hardly ever see that, to tell you the truth.
Even though this is one of your pictures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have seen it. And I know that for the architects out there, most of the time it's so client driven. The client demands that they have endless hot water, or I don't want to hear it, da da da. So the architect is forced to put a water heater like way on the master side, and then maybe another one on the kitchen side, and so on.
Oh,
So,
and that's actually a good strategy, you know, for point of use in a big house, is to have more than one water heater. That's a great strategy. Okay, but that's, oh yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
we have a question that came up from Ellen again. Are the tankless water heaters more energy efficient than recirculating, and do they work okay with heat pumps?
Tankless water heaters, if you're trying to take, if you're working with this mandatory requirement, let's say you have an ADU that's under 500 square feet, and you don't want to run gas line out to your ADU, cost, expense, you're going all electric, you're going to put PVs on the house anyway, that kind of a thing. You're allowed to use an instantaneous electric water heater And in the 2025 code coming up, you'll be allowed to use a small tank type electric water heater if you do this point of use distribution plumbing. And the reason for that is because the electric water heating is not as efficient as a heat pump water heater. But the heat pump water heaters are so big, it seems out of proportion for really small ADUs. So that's kind of where this came from. Compared to gas tankless and a heat pump water heater, right now with the current cost of gas and the current cost of electricity, it's about a wash in terms of your cost as a homeowner. But if the heat pump water heater is not installed properly, which there are things you can do that undermine its performance, like the recirculation pump, then now you're going to be in a world where you're not getting the performance out of the heat pump water heater, and it's going to seem more expensive. But it's not the appliance itself. It really was how somebody installed it. And it's nuanced, but I hope that answers your question. And then we'll have more classes like that coming up to really get into heat pump water heaters, with 3C Ren. There's a number of instructors and courses coming up, and some recordings as well that you can probably tune into. Is that correct, Danica? Those are uploaded on our
Yes, on our
website?
on-demand page, and I will also link that shortly.
Okay, very good. Okay, kind of wrapping up here. Verification and design and construction, team sport.
Absolutely. It starts with the pre-con meeting. Yeah. And then build your team and follow through. And then there's no surprises. Everyone's happy. I mean, what else could I say about that? That's all I got to say about that.
You played sports, right? I
Yeah,
did.
right.
It's a team.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing.
Everyone gets to touch the ball.
That's right. In a good way. Yeah. Okay. So what we say to the architects and anyone out there doing kind of the architectural drafting, architectural design, who's ever in charge of the construction documents, we are really advocating that you put something on the front page and maybe call it your code summary or your code analysis or supporting documents or your ECC summary / HERS summary. But somehow put on there a note that really highlights what the HERS measures and those special inspections are going to be. And maybe now with the way the Title 24 reports are printing these days, who knows? And with digital way folks are setting up their plan set, maybe it's even easier just to do a graphic capture of those measures right off the Title 24 report, and then have a space and cut and paste it in there instead of trying to retype things. Just cut and paste it in there on the cover sheet. That's kind of the new thing we're advocating because it's so important, and we're just going to see that coming up more and more with the new code coming into play, and because of it being a team sport. And the whole reason for that is we're hoping if that's on the front page and not buried within your 20 to 45 page Title 24 report, with all the stuff that you're required to have on your sheets. If that's up front, then that's going to alert.
75-page plan set, it gets buried in there.
Right.
And, I've been at little ADUs that had an all-electric ADU modeled, but the installing contractor put in a Navion, gas tankless. He had to take it out and then start over because it just would not comply, pulling out every possible, measure.
Right. All those other HERS credits and measures.
Wouldn't do it. It had VCHP and everything. So that's why we want to get it right from the start.
Yeah. And if you all have more questions Please remember that we are code coaches and we have other code coaches available to us, and you can, tap into our code coach service with 3C Ren. It is a free service, absolutely open to anybody and everybody that's in our whole 3C Ren area, or if you have a project in our 3C Ren area. So homeowners could call us, refrigerators could call us, architects, builders, installers, just someone who's interested in learning more about the code can call us, and we will help you with the code. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Danica to add anything she wants to about 3C Ren and the code. And then there's a closing slide she's going to go over to have upcoming courses. And then we should have a few minutes left over to answer any lingering questions before we close up in the next 8 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer and Paul, for another amazing course, part 2. So as we wrap up, I launched a survey. Feel free to fill that out and let us know what you're interested in, and if you have any feedback that you'd like to give us to consider for our courses in the future. And let's see. All right, closing slides. So if you have any questions in receiving your AIA or ICC units, feel free to reach out to my email as listed on that slide. And in the next couple of days, you'll receive an email with the slides and the recording for this course. And next week, we have an event I'd like to invite everyone to. It's our in-person regional forum in Santa Barbara at the Lewis Lowry Davis Center. And it'll be preparing buildings for wildfire resiliency in 2025 and beyond. And after the forum, we also have a tour of the County of Santa Barbara Emergency Operations Center and Regional Fire Communication Center. So feel free to share this event as well as who you think would be interested. And we also have a couple of upcoming courses. November 12th, we have Energy Code Update for the building industry, highlighting that 2025 energy code. And on November 19th, if you want to learn more about the HRV and ERV that was discussed in this course, this upcoming course on November 19 is diving into existing multifamily buildings. And we have a couple of heat pump water heater installation courses in each county. So Westlake Village, Santa Maria, and San Luis Obispo. So feel free to come to any of our courses, and they're all offered for free. And yeah, thank you so much for coming. And I'll pass it back to Jennifer and Paul for any last minute questions.
Okay.
Make sure that Ellen's question got answered
Yes.
about the IAQ.
Yes, we can. Ellen, you could. If I end the slideshow, let's see, I'll end the slideshow, and then that way, folks, everyone's kind of listed. And then Ellen, feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah. I've been on 2 jobs this year where there were resealants. These were remodels, not new construction. So there was resealing going on of the ducts and a package unit that was up on the roof. And then there were issues that came up with odors coming through the duct system from all that resealant and using noxious material. So I'm starting to try to make a list of the healthiest versions of those things that I can recommend on jobs, so that you don't end up getting that going through the air system and then not being able to remediate or find the issue unless you track it all the way back to the roof again and start over.
That's fascinating, Ellen. I've never heard of that. The water-based mastic that they use has no odor as far as I know. I haven't seen an MSDS sheet on it, but maybe there's another underlying issue with those installs. Package units, as you know, are a real bugger because they have to sit just right on the curb that they have on the roof and so on, and they're tough to seal. And as such, maybe there's something else being introduced in there. God, I would love to go to a job like that and see what products were employed in the sealing process,
So
because is that really the source or not, you know?
yeah, they
Or
were
maybe there's
paving
something
and
else.
sealing, like you
Yeah,
were describing for the new construction, but there was something about the sealant that got used, I think, because it's the only thing that was liquid that was going to cure, that then was
yeah,
off-gassing into the air system.
yeah.
And I'm concerned that maybe one of the things happening is that in liquid form, as it's applied, it then gets into the old fiberglass insulation in some of these older vents that then, isn't going to go anywhere. It just gets stuck.
Right.
So that's why I was wondering if you knew of, that was why I asked the question then, was even though you're talking about energy efficiency, that would come up right away as an issue when it comes into that testing. So that's why I thought,
Yeah.
okay,
No fun to spend all this energy on energy efficiency at the expense of
yeah,
indoor air quality. Right, I'm
right,
with you.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it looks like Dave had, also kind of mentioned that possibly the curb sealant. Feel
Mhm.
free to unmute yourself, Dave, if you want to jump in. This is super interesting, and it's fun to troubleshoot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of course, the other thing too is in older homes in our area, I know a lot of areas of Orchid and old Orchid.
Mhm.
Those duct systems had a lot of asbestos
Mhm.
product for ducted systems. So
Mhm.
you have to be careful on those jobs.
Mhm.
right. That's so true. Yeah. Um, I know. I'm like
Okay.
you. My brain just starts clicking, and now I'm like, oh, I just want to go find out. I'm like, I want to go to the job site and
Yeah, right.
figure it out.
They finally, on the one job, they finally replaced the entire package unit on the roof and the ducting and everything because they couldn't get rid of the smells without
Wow.
doing a drastic change. It just somehow had done a leak. And I think David said the curb sealant for the package unit may have been, maybe when they were trying to do the first reseal, that might have been an issue. And then they ended up having to change the whole thing. So
Yeah.
anyway, it was a bad issue that went on for weeks.
Wow. Did it resolve though after they changed out the whole unit and
A
redid
whole
it?
system, yeah.
Where was that located, Ellen?
Studio City.
Okay.
It was an older home, mid-century. I would guess that, nothing had been done on that system for at least 25, 30 years. So I'm going to guess that it had just worn out and everything had saturated into the material.
Yeah. So it was due for a new duct system anyway,
Yeah,
probably, right? Yeah. But were they
yeah.
able to kind of hide the pack unit on the back of the house so you're not seeing it at street level?
The way it's oriented, it's up on a hill anyway, and
Mm.
sort of in a catty corner situation with some trees, so you don't end up seeing it. It's sort of in between on the struts there. So yeah.
In my opinion, all of HVAC is kind of a band-aid in the search for comfort because you're spending a lot of energy blowing air around. But the goal is
Mhm.
to achieve mean radiant temperature that's comfortable for everyone.
Right.
The 70 to 75 or 68 to 75 range.
Right.
So, you can spend a lot of money and have radiant floor heating or whatever,
Yeah.
or not. So HVAC has just been the go-to for millions upon millions of dwellings in our world.
Right. And then part of the whole reason the energy code became a thing in the first place is because of that, and looking at how much energy it took just to be comfortable. So the whole idea is, hey, let's design our buildings better from the get-go, then they
Right.
inherently are more comfortable and use less energy,
Passive house.
right? And passive solar heating. Yes. Well, I think it's 11, and Danica, we had a hard stop today at 11,
Yes.
and I just want to say thank you
Okay.
to everybody, and I'm glad you could attend. And I'll
Thank
let
you
go.
very much. Thank you. I
Bye now.
appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, and hopefully see you again in another training.
Okay. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.